Welcome to Hidden Reality, where we uncover the truths buried right beneath the surface. Today, we're jumping into an intensive explainer to decode a series of mysteries hidden deep within the ocean's unforgiving waters. We're looking way beyond the headlines and standard history books, We want to unearth the true hidden catalysts behind some of the absolute most infamous moments in modern history. So let's just dive right into this. On the surface, you might be wondering, what could the RMS Titanic in 1912, the Costa Concordia in 2012, and the Titan Submersible in 2023 possibly have in common? They seem completely unrelated, right? But our investigation here at Hidden Reality shows a chilling link between these three vessels. It's actually not a specific mechanical failure, and it's definitely not some cursed patch of ocean. The connection is much darker, and it is entirely human. It all really begins with this intoxicating dose of human arrogance. Creators and captains alike falsely believed that their engineering could somehow outsmart the ocean. I mean, the Titanic was notoriously dubbed the unsinkable pride of the White Star Line. And then, over a century later, OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush justified his experimental submarine by literally declaring, "I've broken some rules. I think I've broken them with logic." Well, let's see exactly what happens when human hubris decides to challenge nature. Take the Titan Submersible, for example. Our investigation reveals a genuinely staggering trail of ignored red flags. Years before that fatal 2023 dive, Stockton Rush was actively ignoring dire warnings. Back in 2018, a letter signed by 36 industry leaders explicitly warned him that his experimental carbon fiber hull, a material that had never been properly tested for extreme depths, was basically a disaster waiting to happen. And get this, the vessel didn't even have a standard emergency locator beacon on board. Zero. You really have to notice the sheer defiance in Rush's own words. He actually claimed in an interview that, at some point, safety just is pure waste. He chose to pilot this uncertified 10,400-kilogram vessel down to these extreme, crushing depths, and he operated the entire machine with a repurposed video game controller. To make matters worse, the hatch was bolted from the outside with 17 bolts. That meant even if they miraculously reached the surface, the 5 passengers would literally suffocate without someone on the outside to open it. But let's rewind a bit to 2012 and see how this exact same arrogance builds in a totally different scenario. The Costa Concordia was this massive $570 million cruise ship carrying 4,252 people. And when things went wrong, it didn't just suffer a simple electrical blackout like Captain Francesco Schettino claimed to his terrified passengers. No, in reality, the ship had been brutally wounded. It suffered a massive 70-meter tear right in its hull. Hidden Reality's timeline completely uncovers the anatomy of his lie. Captain Schettino deliberately deviated from the safe route just to do a flashy sail-by of Giglio Island. He brought this incredibly massive ship a mere 150 meters from the shore in the pitch dark. After hitting the reef at 9:45 p.m., he lied for an agonizing hour, claiming it was just an electrical failure while the engine rooms were literally flooding with seawater. He didn't finally give the abandoned ship order until 10:54 p.m., and then, unbelievably, he abandoned the sinking vessel himself, long before his passengers were safe. And then, of course, there's the Titanic, where the ultimate hidden detail emerges. You always hear about the iceberg, but why didn't they see it sooner on that freezing, moonless night? Well, lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee lacked binoculars because of a ridiculously simple fatal error. An officer who was transferred off the ship accidentally took the locker key with him. Oh, and here's another thing. The iceberg didn't carve a massive 300-foot gash into the side of the ship like the myths always say. It was actually just a 30-foot crack. The crucial detail really comes down to one staggering number, 11 square feet. That tiny 11-square-foot opening spread out across the side of the hull was all it took. Just think about that. Because of the extreme water pressure, 370 gallons of freezing water flooded into the unsinkable behemoth every single second, breaching 6 of its supposedly watertight compartments. Which brings us to the next part of our explainer, the catastrophic climax, when nature finally breaks steel. We've seen the ignored warnings, the arrogant decisions, the tiny mistakes. But when the limits of engineering are finally breached, the outcome unfolds with terrifying, unstoppable violence. The ocean's midnight zone is this alien, pitch-black world. It plunges down an unfathomable 12,500 feet to the final resting place of the Titanic. To put that into perspective, light completely stops penetrating the water after just 3,300 feet. It takes over 2 hours of descending through total heavy darkness just to reach the ocean floor. And at that terrifying 12,500-foot depth, the crushing weight of the water exerts a pressure nearly 400 times greater than what we ever feel on the surface. That is an incredibly unforgiving environment where things like steel, glass, and especially experimental materials are pushed far beyond their absolute limits. This immense pressure is what leads us to the terrifying fate of the Titan. Now, we often think of explosions, right? Pushing outward. But an implosion is the exact opposite. It's a sudden, violent collapse of a structure inward because it's just overwhelmed by external pressure. Hidden Reality's investigation into the data confirms the absolute grim truth of what happened. That deep-sea pressure crushed the Titan's experimental carbon fiber hull inward. The entire structure and its 5 passengers were literally obliterated in less than a single millisecond. Think about that time frame. It happened so incredibly fast that the human brain wouldn't have even had the time to register the event. It was instantaneous. But then, in stark, terrifying contrast to that millisecond destruction of the Titan, you have the Titanic. Those passengers suffered an agonizing 2-hour and 40-minute descent into freezing -2 degrees Celsius waters. Panic just spread slowly as the massive ship tilted further and further forward, eventually leaving over 1,500 people completely stranded with no lifeboats left. And this brings us to a stunning revelation that was actually buried for decades. For 100 years, survivors kept claiming the ship broke in half at the surface, and honestly, a lot of experts just dismissed it. But modern 3D sonar scans of the debris field, which spans over 3 square kilometers, by the way, prove the survivors were right all along. The immense weight of the water in the bow literally lifted the stern up into the air until the steel violently snapped, twisting and tearing the entire ship in two. Perhaps the darkest mystery decoded by Hidden Reality regarding that awful night is the tragic fate of the SS Californian. Get this, this ship was a mere 37 kilometers away from the sinking Titanic. Their crew physically saw the distress flares lighting up the dark sky. But because they had decided to turn off their wireless radio for the night, they never received the SOS signals. If they had just responded, the loss of life could have been drastically minimized. Let's move to our final section, What the Ocean Claims, the Final Reflection. Ultimately, the sea always reclaims human hubris. Whether it's a colossal cruise liner, an unsinkable legend, or an experimental submersible, the deep sea slowly and silently absorbs these massive monuments right back into its hidden ecosystem. Just look at the sheer scale of the aftermath here. The Costa Concordia required a staggering, totally unprecedented $1.2 billion engineering marvel just to be refloated and scrapped. The Titan, being obliterated instantly, was completely unrecoverable, leaving only a few scattered pieces. And the Titanic? Left to the abyss, just decaying on the ocean floor. In fact, our investigation found that the Titanic is quite literally vanishing before our very eyes. There are these metal-eating bacteria creating fragile formations down there called rusticles, and because the stern sustained such massive damage imploding on its way down to the ocean floor, these bacteria are violently breaking down the back half of the ship 40 years faster than anyone ever anticipated. Pretty soon those iconic decks are going to collapse entirely. Yet even with all this tragedy, the deep ocean still holds these beautiful, totally unexpected secrets. For instance, in 1998, diver Paul-Henri Nargeolet, who tragically later perished on the Titan, detected a massive, mysterious sonar blip near the Titanic. For over 2 decades, scientists argued about what it could possibly be. Was it another shipwreck, some weird geological anomaly? Well, the mystery was finally solved in 2022. It turned out not to be another broken shipwreck born of human error. It was actually a massive, completely undiscovered volcanic reef sitting at 9,514 feet deep. It's teeming with fragile marine life, sponges, corals, and lobsters all surviving in pitch blackness. It is literally a thriving natural ecosystem right beside the decaying grave of the Titanic. So, as the ocean systematically dissolves these tragic monuments of our arrogance, we're really left with one final question. From the tiny 11-square-foot crack that sank an absolute legend, to the cowardly lies off the coast of Italy, to the instantaneous destruction of a carbon fiber tube, will humanity ever actually learn to respect the unknown power of the deep? This mystery has been officially decoded by Hidden Reality. The ocean keeps its secrets incredibly well, but we are always watching. Be sure to subscribe to Hidden Reality for more deep dives into the unknown. We'll see you next time.